Whoop whoop! We're talking today about the Plains Native Americans that lived in the Great Plains, in the United States, in North America, in the Northern Hemisphere, on planet Earth, in the solar system. You get the idea. Moving on. So, natural resources of the Plains Native Americans. Well, when I think of plains, I think of P for Plains, P for Pawnee. Pawnee is a Native American tribe that lived in the Great Plains. Experts with using the buffalo to their advantage. They use the buffalo for absolutely everything, and I'm going to explain a lot more about that throughout this video. So, natural resources, buffalo, and more buffalo. There were millions and millions of buffalo herds in the Great Plains before the arrival of Christopher Columbus and Europeans throughout the course of the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, even up to today. But you had flat land, which was easy. It was actually it was not a physical barrier, but it was a physical gateway that they could use to move west, that Americans used to move west. But flat land was easy to move on, easy to travel on, easy to hunt on because you could easily see the buffalo. The only problem is they could easily see you as well. So there was no peekaboo there. All right, animals. Rivers, sod, which sod is like the grass. It's like the layer of humus that grows on soil that is the broken down plant and animal remains. But you can buy sod like at Home Depot or Lowe's, which is like it contains soil, but it's really the grass that they would use. And they actually use that for some of the homes that they built, permanent shelters that they used. And earth, you're thinking to yourself, dude, how are they going to use earth if I live on earth? Well, I'm going to tell you, earth is another name for soil. So they use the soil to meet their needs, okay? All right, so clothing, breechcloths, another type of pants, buckskin tunics, okay? So what this is, it's kind of like a cape, kind of like a dress. It's just a way of covering themselves because in the Great Plains, the climate was very temperate, which meant there's 4 distinct seasons. And the 4 distinct seasons brought lots of snow in the wintertime. It was extremely hot in the summertime. And there's absolutely fundamentally no trees in this area. I will tell you this. I love the United States of America. One of my least favorite parts of traveling is driving through the Great Plains. And the reason why, because it can be boring at times. There's no trees to look at. The land is flat. And it just seems the same all the time. But anyways, I digress. Next, turbans. Yes, they used head wraps, and that was just part of their culture. Men plucked their beards and their eyebrows. They didn't like body hair, so they plucked out their beards and plucked out their eyebrows. They didn't grow mustaches either. They did not like hair on the face for some reason. Headdresses. You think about your Sioux Native Americans wearing your war bonnets with feathers. That was this particular region, the Plains Native Americans. They used brightly colored feathers from birds, or if the feathers were not brightly colored, they could paint them with pigment gathered from berries. Bones, and you're thinking to yourself, dude, they wore bones and stuff? No, they didn't. They actually used bones to make jewelry. And they had necklaces. They made dresses and they had robes, not like a pink fuzzy robe. They used robes to cover themselves, especially in the fall and winter time when the temperatures would dip and the potential of snow may have been arriving. Shelter. Let's talk about the shelter. Permanent versus temporary. Okay, a permanent shelter is where they lived most of the time. Think about this as like us. You have some people that have a permanent home, that's where they live most of the year, but then they have like an RV or they have a vacation home. Not me, but I wish I did. But anyways, I'm telling you that the temporary shelter that they had was known as a teepee. The teepee came from any bits of wood that they could find to prop it up and the skin of buffalo. So they make like this leather and they would cover the sticks that they put in a formation. It would make a cone shape and it would protect them from the elements while they were on a hunting expedition. So they could be constructed and deconstructed quickly. They could be made and unmade very quickly. And that's good because if you're following the buffalo herds, you need to get going when you need to get going. So if it's time to go, it's time to go. So the teepee was very easy to put together, very easy to take down, very easy to carry as well. And it's not bulky. It's not a lot you're carrying. You could actually wrap up the sticks, the branches or whatever you used. You could wrap them up with the hide, and it was just relatively easy to carry. Really smart. It was cone shaped, like I said, and they had a hole in the top. Well, they had the hole at the top. Why, you think? That's right. To allow smoke, if they were making a fire on the inside, to allow the smoke an outlet to get out. If they didn't put a hole up top, it'd just be really smoky on the inside, very uncomfortable, very stinky, nasty, and not exactly where I'd like to stay. So they allowed the smoke to escape, but also for ventilation. So if they were not making a fire, that would allow a breeze to come through. They usually left a flap for an entrance, but it could house a family. Not a large family. It depends. I've seen different sized teepees, but most of the time they were smaller for hunting expeditions, just maybe several men from a tribe. Location: the Great Plains. It's also known as the Midwest. It's in Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, west of the Mississippi, east of the Rocky Mountains. So these are just some places to help you remember where exactly the Plains Native Americans lived. It's in the breadbasket, baby. It's in the middle of the United States. Climate: cool in the winter, hot in the summer. 25 to 75 centimeters of precipitation annually. It's a lot more than the Southwest, where they only got 10 centimeters of precipitation annually, but it's significantly less in the plains than it was in the Pacific Northwest, where they would get up to 120 centimeters of precipitation annually. So there were lots of rivers, lots of streams, lots of opportunities to catch fish if they needed to supplement their diets. Tribes: you had the Crow, the Sioux, the Osage, the Cree, the Blackfoot, Pawnee, Hidatsa, Mandan, Comanche, Wichita, and Cheyenne. So those are some of the tribes you'd bump into in the Plains region. Culture: they had lots of singing, lots of dancing, lots of ceremonies, pictograms, storytelling, religion, and prayer. Transportation: well, they didn't have Cadillacs or Escalades and none of this stuff. They didn't have mopeds. They didn't have go-karts. You get the idea. They walked, okay? They would walk. They used boats if they had a river, if that would help them get to their destination a lot quicker. Then they had sleds known as travois, all right? Physical features, okay? In the Great Plains, well, it's called the Great Plains for a reason. It's great, which means it's a large, vast area, and plain means flat, okay? So large, flat area. Flat land, grassy. They used the grass to their advantage. They would make some of the permanent shelters were made out of sod and earth, and so there were prairies, streams, and rivers. So that's the kind of physical features you would see in the Great Plains. Hunting: like I said earlier, we're going to talk about some buffalo. They use the buffalo for everything. They use the tail of a buffalo for a fly swatter. They use the stomach as a method of transporting water. They used the eyeballs. They used the hooves for glue. They used every part of the buffalo to meet their needs for food, clothing, and shelter, and some other things too. Especially their culture with dancing. and clothing. Just think about it. But also they had deer, elk, bear, antelope, prairie dogs. No, not like woof woof, like prairie dogs, like prairie dog. All right. Wolves, turkey, and several others. They would also hunt birds as well, just birds that were in the area. But they had a very interesting mechanism for hunting birds. They would have seeds, and then birds, they love seeds, and so they would hide. They would use disguises. They'd throw rocks. They were very creative in how they would get food to meet their needs. Farmers, they weren't expert farmers because they didn't need to be. They used their environment to meet their needs, and what was plentiful in their environment was buffalo. So, but when they did farm, you'd see corn, beans, sunflower, pumpkins, and squash, and something tells me that either some of these Native Americans migrated to the Southwest or Native Americans in the Southwest migrated to the plains, but farming techniques that's something that they had gathered over the course of time, and then they shared and traded, and people throughout the what is now the United States, the Native Americans, they became experts through communication, and they would share information about how they did this and how they did that. Gathering. Berries, nuts, bulbs, and seeds. They would have to gather as a means of protecting themselves in like a harsh winter, but the things that they would gather would be easily stored and easily preserved. Bada bing, bada boom, this dude is through. I have talked about and reviewed Plains Native Americans. What do you know about them now?